Classification. Classification of organisms is an activity that belongs exclusively to systematics. But this exclusive relationship does not warrant equation of the two. The activity of systematics is studying relationships among kinds of organisms almost necessitates the erection of some formal system in which the organisms are grouped into classes and the names by which these classes are designated. This involves what is known as classification. The classification thus can be defined more clearly as follows. Classification is the ordering of organisms into groups or sets on the basis of their relationship. Aims of classification. Ordering of animals into groups or sets based on relationship. To show their presumed relationship through evolution. To acquire scientific knowledge about the major groups by studying a few representatives. By analyzing the classes and dissimilarities featured, the newly found organisms are included in species rank. To place a new species in definite genus. Misplaced species in different families are placed in actual places. Types of classification. From the time of Linnaeus up to the present day, there has been an evolution of the classification of animals and plants. On this basis, classification is considered as artificial system of classification, natural system of classification, and phylogenetic system of classification. Now, first come to the artificial system of classification. Linnaeus determined different species on the basis of some morphological characters, and his creation of species is known as morphospecies. Animals with more or less similar species morphological characters were regarded as same. Artificial classification is based upon a particular selective character. It is said by Meyer and Aslock in 1991. Natural system of classification. Many morphological character, termed character, and all living beings have evolved from a common ancestors are considered in the classification. In 1965, Smith mentioned this type of classification as more phylogenetic because the evolutionary relationship has been reflected in this type of classification. In 1967, Blackwelder described this classification as hypothetical. A number of views has been emerged on the basis of natural classification. These are Phenetic, Cladistic, and Evolutionary. Phenetic. Animals are classified observing overall similarities among them. Cladistic. This type of classification was proposed by Henning in 1950. Besides overall similarities among the characters, Henning emphasized on the innate and acquired characters. He prepared phylogenetic trees, and the name of the tree is cladogram. Evolutionary. This type of classification is based upon the relationship among the common descendants. Last is phylogenetic type of classification. In this classification, morphological characters, phylogenetic origin, evolutionary relationship, etc. are given importance. Engler, Hutchinson, etc. proposed such type of classification system. Forms of classification. Classification by overlapping or coincidence of non-identical classes is known as key classification. Classification by subordination of some classes to others or inclusion of the former to latter is known as classification by subordination. An example will make the above contentions clear. There is a group of animals known as mammals. There can be a class horned mammals, a class of two-toed mammals, and a class of horned two-toed mammals. The characters horned and two-toed are overlapped. This type of overlapping classification is known as key classification. In case of classification by subordination, the same example can be taken. Horned mammals are designated as a class with one or several species that are subordinate to and included in a large class Mammalia. Similarly, two-toed mammals are included in the class Mammalia and are subordinate to it. This system of classification by subordination is known as hierarchy. The hierarchy and key can be defined. According to Simpson, in 1961, a hierarchy is a systematic framework of zoological classification with sequence of classes or sets at different levels in which each class except the lowest includes one or more subordinate classes. He also said that a key is a systematic framework for zoological classification with a sequence of classes at a level of which more restricted classes are formed by the overlap of two or more classes at the next higher level. In principle, these two frameworks are quite distinct and are sharply distinguished by the fact that in a hierarchy, each class belongs to a single class at the next higher level, while in a key, each class belongs to two or more classes at the next higher level. Because a key involves no principle of priority and has a purely arbitrary conventional sequence, keys are universally considered artificial. A hierarchy does involve principle of priority, and to the extent that these principles are derived from natural relationship among organisms, hierarchic classification is natural. Hierarchical classification. The various forms of life known to Carolus Linnaeus not only were described and named, but were arranged by him in hierarchical succession of groups. Species which seemed similar were placed in the same genus. Similar genera were placed together to make up a family. Families were grouped into orders, orders into classes, classes into phyla. Modern usage is somewhat different from that of a Linnaeus in the number and scope of these terms. But the principles of the system remain essentially as he designed them. This system of hierarchy classification was first adopted by Linnaeus in his book Systema Naturae, 10th edition, published in 1758 and named as Linnaean hierarchy. Any rank of this hierarchical classification is known as a taxon, plural taxa, as species, genus, family, order, class, etc., each of which is a taxon. Linnaeus' system comprises of 7 taxa as 1 species, 2 genus, 3 family, 4 order, 5 class, 6 phylum, and 7 kingdom. But the number of plants and animals are so vast and varied that they could not be always incorporated successfully within these 7 taxa. So new taxa like super, sub, infra, etc. are to be added to the existing system. Whatever may be the additions, the Linnaean basic 7 taxa must be maintained, and this is what is known as Linnaean hierarchy. Unless these basic 7 levels are maintained, no classification is accepted. An example of a complete hierarchy used in classification of a large number of groups of animals is as follows: kingdom, phylum, subphylum, superclass, class, subclass, infraclass, cohort, superorder, order, suborder, infraorder, superfamily, family, subfamily, tribe, subtribe, genus, subgenus, species, subspecies. This has 21 levels. This use of any particular number of levels is a completely arbitrary convention and is imposed by practical necessity. Use of the 7 basic lineage levels is required by convention, and no classification is accepted unless it has been placed implicitly or explicitly in some definite group at each of the 7 levels.